Welcome. In this video we're going to be learning about digestion. Now before we look at digestion, we need to know, why do we eat? The reason we eat is so that nutrients from our food can go into our body. This includes nutrients such as proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Our bodies need these nutrients in order to function properly and be ready for action. So let's see how this stuff on the left goes into our body. So talking about the main nutrients, we have proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, also known as lipids. Now the problem with these nutrients in terms of digestion is that they are large molecules. So our body, via digestion, turns it into smaller and more soluble molecules. For example, proteins are converted into amino acids. Carbohydrates are converted into glucose and other sugars. And lipids are converted into glycerol and fatty acids. The breakdown of nutrients requires enzymes. You could think of enzymes almost like biological scissors. They chop down the large molecules into small ones. However, every type of nutrient has its own enzyme. So for proteins, the enzyme is called protease. Carbohydrates require a different enzyme called carbohydrase. And lipids require a different enzyme called lipase. Notice that all three enzymes have the ending ase. That's how you know it's an enzyme. These enzymes break down the bonds in the large molecules to give us smaller ones. Now let's see how these guys work in the digestive system. So here we have a basic diagram of the digestive system. We're going to keep a key of the different enzymes. So a red dot means protease, a green dot represents carbohydrase, and a blue dot represents lipase. Let's go through the digestive system and see how food is broken down and absorbed. Our first stop is in the mouth. In the mouth, teeth mechanically break down food. At the same time, the salivary glands, which are in the mouth, produce amylase, which is a type of carbohydrate. This chemically breaks down the food. So in the mouth, we have both mechanical and chemical digestion. But remember, amylase only breaks down carbohydrates, not proteins or fats. Next, the food travels down the esophagus, or the food pipe, until it gets to the stomach. In the stomach, we have hydrochloric acid. This is really important because it kills bacteria that might make us ill. And at the same time, it creates the right pH for the enzyme pepsin. Pepsin is an example of a protease. And proteases break down proteins. So this is an example of chemical digestion. In addition to this, the stomach walls churn, which means they squeeze the food. Churning is an example of mechanical breakdown. The food from here makes its way into the small intestine. However, before we look at what happens in the small intestine, let's go back and see what happens in the liver. The liver makes a very important chemical called bile. Now, although bile is made in the liver, it's actually stored in the gallbladder. From there, it makes its way to the small intestine. But what does bile do? Bile takes part in an important reaction called emulsification. In emulsification, large droplets of fat are broken down by bile into smaller droplets. These small droplets have a larger surface area compared to the one big droplet. The larger surface area means that the fats have faster digestion by lipase. Over here we have the pancreas. The pancreas makes all three enzymes, protease, carbohydrase, and lipase. Okay, so from the stomach, liver, and pancreas, all of the chemicals come together and go into the small intestine. Here's where the main action happens. In the small intestine, the food is finally digested into even smaller components. Once they're small enough, they then get absorbed into the blood. The food would not be absorbed if it hasn't been digested. Next, we have the large intestine. The large intestine's function is to allow water to be absorbed into the blood. Finally, food that is not digested is released by the rectum. Okay, final point about the small and large intestine. Over here, we can find billions of good bacteria. Yes, we have bacteria in our body all the time. However, these bacteria are your friends because they produce things like vitamin K, hormones, and most importantly, they stop harmful bacteria from growing in your intestines and making you ill. Okay, let's look at the small intestine in a bit more detail. We said that the small intestine is important for absorption of food. But how is it able to absorb food so well? The reason behind that is because the small intestine has structures like these. A single one is called a villi. Many of these structures are called villi. And on the surface of villi, we have even smaller microvilli. So what do villi and microvilli do? Number one, they have a thin outer layer, which means food can easily pass from the small intestine into our blood. Number two, they have a good blood supply. As you can see, all of these are blood vessels, and they help to keep the food moving along so that more food can enter. Once the food's been absorbed in the blood takes it to our cells where they can be taken in by diffusion. And finally, the millions of villi and microvilli create a large surface area for food to be absorbed. Hey guys, if that video helped you, support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends. And more importantly, if you still have questions, drop a post on our forum at examqa.com, where I will personally be there to help answer your questions. Mohammed signing out.